David Brewster here with the 3 for All, and this is 3 Greg Howe Licks from 1988. And Greg Howe is definitely a legendary, guitarist and a shred pioneer. He was a part of the original batch of Shrapnel Records artists that hit the scene like in the mid 80s, mid to late 80s. Vinnie Moore and Tony MacAlpine and Paul Gilbert and that gang, Richie Kotzen and all those players. And Greg was part of that original, kind of group of players. And his self-titled debut album hit the scene. He got a lot of attention. He popped up in a lot of guitar magazines. And I was familiar with him pretty early on. Like as soon as I noticed him, I was like, hey, who's this guy? And I listened to him and, I watched like his instructional video and, read articles and stuff about him in magazines, and I became a fan. Definitely a great player. And he's worked with a ton of, great musicians and collaborations and tours and, really exciting player. I just shared that image, with some of the people that he's worked with and toured and performed and recorded. And it's interesting that he can wear so many different hats, and he does it, skilled and comfortably, because he can play the craziest fusion with someone like Dennis Chambers, Victor Wooten, and players like that, and then turn around and play pop and go on tour with Christina Aguilera or, these pop artists too. And he can go back and forth and doesn't miss a beat, doesn't seem to really affect him either way, whether he's playing pop or fusion or rock or shred or funk or whatever he's doing. He can do it all. And the licks in this lesson actually came from an old bootleg from a clinic he gave at GIT. And I found it on YouTube, and I'd never seen the footage. And the footage is really close, like it's tight on his hand. And you don't really see his face. Like it's kind of just, his hands and his guitar neck for the most part. But you can tell it's him. And, at different moments during the video, they did show his face. They kind of panned out. But whoever the camera person was on the money, because they just filmed, this good view. You can see, where he is. You can hear everything. And I wasn't really familiar with the song. I don't know if it wasn't on his debut, and maybe he ended up recording it at some point, and I kind of missed what recording it appears on. The clinic's from '88. It sounds like it's a backing track, and maybe it's just a song demo or a jam or something that he used, for that clinic. So maybe he didn't actually record and release the song, but it's really cool. And I want to jump in because these are some cool licks, and Greg's a monster. The first lick is this A7 based kind of slippery legato arpeggio idea. And the jam that he's playing during this video clip, this bootleg, it's kind of, in A7, and you'll hear some changes, like you'll hear it move from E7 to D7, and there's some other parts in there too. And it's a wild jam. Like he just starts, shredding and going crazy. And then there's like this kind of classical section in the middle with all this pedal point, and it shifts around. It's really interesting. But the first lick looks like this. It's really cool. And he's string skipping and, incorporating, arpeggios, but he's also shifting positions and sliding, and there's a lot of legato. Cool lick. So slowly we've got and I really like how he, moves out of this position. Really clever. And then right there, he's going to string skip from the D to the B string. And then, that's really unusual to kind of reach over there and you're skipping strings with your pinky, but you're also rolling from the D to the B string. That's hard. Especially to get it clean too, that's really tough. Let me try that again. And it's a crazy lick, and it's kind of spastic and hyperactive, but it's really cool. The next lick takes place during that E7 to D7 change during this jam, and he's outlining the chords, brilliantly. Really cool lick. It looks like this. And it's slippery, and he's, shifting positions, but the first half is all over E7. And then right there, he's going to slide, and it's changing to D7. right here, really cool. And I like how he's moving, you know, from this position. And he basically kind of hits, you know, two arpeggio, you know, fingerings or two shapes right there. You know, that higher D and this lower D down here. So it's really cool the way he's mixing and matching, you know, E7 and then blurs into D7. And of course he's making his way back to A. But one more time. Really cool. The next lick's a real finger twister, and this takes place over E7 and then it moves to A7. So we're still, you know, targeting and playing over the chords and the progression. But the way he does it is, you know, he's an expert at doing this, a master, where he's just blurring his way from E7 and then just blurs his way, you know, through to A7. And you notice it, but you don't really hear, you know, the shift. It's just, he just seamlessly moves from one to the next, which is so cool. But it looks and sounds like this. It's really crazy. So he starts with this E major arpeggio up here. It's kind of a E, you know, E major. He's also flirting with the sus4 there, that A note. And that's all over E7. And then he starts kind of zigzagging and you know, moving his way down. It's basically an A minor 6 string skipped arpeggio. So it changed to A right here. But he's doing this. Which is really cool. That lick on its own, you know, has its own kind of, you know, attitude or vibe. It's really cool. And when you put those two licks together, it's magic. You know, it's like, whoa, that's so cool. It's like falling down the stairs, but you land on your feet. Here's a bonus lick from this bootleg, you know, from GIT. And this is insane. This is really cool, but it's really hard. And it's this just blurry, legato, chromatic based, just freak out, I guess. There's really not a better way to describe it. It's very unorthodox. It's probably going to confuse your fret hand at first. It might even confuse your ear until you start to kind of hear like the sequence and the way it kind of flows. But it's definitely a showstopper. You know, you start whipping something like this out in a solo, and everybody's going to look at you like, what is that? You know, whoa. It's really cool. It looks like this. And this is over the A. And then at the end, he's kind of flirting with like G. So I think it temporarily moved to like G7, you know, and then moves back to A. We've got this. It's really crazy. Let me try that again. And it's tough to get it to sound like Greg. That's kind of sloppy compared to him. But slowly, you actually kind of see what he's doing. And it's a finger twister. You know, you're rolling your fingers, you're doing fast legato chromatically. It's weird, but we got this really slow. It just kind of ends with like this little G5, like a G5 over D, I guess. And Greg does tapping licks like that, where he gets this blurry tap thing happening, but he's not tapping on this one. He's using, you know, legato and just flying around the fretboard. And it's a dizzy lick. And once again, it's blurry because there's all this chromatic and legato usage, but a cool sound though. Really unusual, but it's so cool. That's going to wrap this look at 3 Greg Howe Licks from 1988, and definitely he's a monster player, you know, very smooth and quirky, and, you know, he has these very unorthodox, you know, position shifts and tapping ideas and hybrid picking and open string licks, and there's all kinds of stuff, you know, that he's kind of, you know, secretly kind of keeping, and then every once in a while you'll see him, you know, play somewhere in a concert or a live clip or something, and he whips out these crazy licks where it's like, oh my gosh, you know, did you hear that? It's like, oh my, and it's so smooth too. And I'm a big legato fan. I love legato players, Satriani and Alan Halsworth and, Van Halen and people too. And I think that was the first thing I really caught with Greg was like, hey, he's slurring a lot and there's some string skipping and lots of arpeggios. And, as soon as I heard him play, I was a fan. I was like, yeah, I like his style. It's rock, it's blues, a little bit of classical in the early days, but then he started kind of changing more toward jazz and fusion, which I really like too. And exciting player for sure. So anyway, leave some feedback and some comments. Please subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content material. Thank you.